mindfulness, and now it's time to explore how living a soul-led life transforms our experience. So let's get started. So I'm going to recap real quick. Last week we talked about embodiment. Embodiment is about being fully present in our physical bodies. It's the tangible, visible form of our ideas, qualities, and feelings. Remembering that our bodies aren't sinful or bad. We've been indoctrinated perhaps to believe that they are, but they're not, and they're actually expressions of our divine essence. By embracing embodiment, we honor our physical experiences, which includes acknowledging our emotions, senses, and physical needs. Our body is a tool for experiencing life fully and authentically, which can't be separated. The body, mind, spirit. It's one thing, the further into it I dive, the more I realize there really are, I know I said this last week, like all different sides to the same coin. To recap our mindfulness episode real quick, mindfulness is about being intentionally aware and engaged in the present moment. It involves acceptance and non-judgment of our thoughts and feelings, fully feeling those feelings. Practicing mindfulness allows us to observe our thoughts without being consumed by them. Mindfulness helps us stay present and connected to our inner truth. Some examples of mindfulness practices include mindful breathing, mindful eating, mindful movement. Did anybody try this? I'm really curious. Did anybody try any of these things? I haven't heard from you yet. Let me know. I'm curious to see if you did and how that went for you. So going back to kind of the whole umbrella of it all is the soul. You know, we've talked about the gold, right? In our portion of gold, but there's this larger source of gold that has a broader perspective of what's happening around us. And so that broader perspective knows what we truly desire. It understands where we are in relationship to what we desire, and it knows how to guide us there. And that's why it gives us these like internal nudges that a lot of times to us, they don't even make sense. So we ignore them and we rationalize them. We get them in our mind and we we try to make sense of it, and then we don't follow them. But those nudges, it's that higher perspective leading us to where we want to be. You know, we've been indoctrinated. We go back into like our life's purpose isn't preordained. It's not a strict path. We came knowing what we wanted to experience. I don't know the depths of it. I don't remember all of it. I remember parts. I don't remember all of what it was like to be a non-physical. But I do truly believe that we know what we want to experience. Maybe not specifically like every single thing. Like I experienced sickness because I got COVID, but maybe I'm going to go through a big sickness so that I can go within and learn how to slow down and calm my nervous system and learn these things that I'm talking about now, and like fully embody them and integrate them into my own life. So, it's like our soul knows what we want to experience. But we get, as the human, get to create our desires. And that's one thing that our mind is great at. It's like helping us see things. Oh, I don't like that. Oh, I do like that. Oh, I want more of that, less of that. And that creates the desires. So it's a co-creation of our soul, our mind, the body, mind, spirit. It's all working together to create Melissa's life. Or your life, whoever you are. So that's kind of the gist of it. So when we trust this soul, this broader perspective, and we understand that it sees things that we don't, and that we don't have to look for a purpose that we're supposed to be living, when we start tuning in and getting to know ourselves better through this body, mind, spirit approach, then we choose. We know what we want. We know what we want to experience, and we know what we want to do. We create desires, and then we move towards them, or we continue to want them and be separate from them and feel anguish over it. There's so many routes to go on that, but ideally we create the desire, and then we co-create with spirit, with the source energy, to manifest in physical form what it is that, if in that physical form, could be through our own experience, through our own emotions, right? But we manifest into physical form what we want to experience in a co-creation. But I'm going way too deep into that. That's for another day, friends. It's for another day. But it's important to remember that we can't get it wrong and we can't fuck it up, because it's ours. It's our own unique path, and we get to choose it, period. So when we trust that higher consciousness, that broader perspective, and we lean into that and surrender to that, it leads us to the most beautiful life, like something beyond what we could ever even imagine ourselves. And I really know on my journey, like I'm just at the beginning of seeing my dreams realized. I still got ways to go. I still got things to accomplish. I really coming out of a valley, several years valley, that really culminated in a lot of struggle. So, coming out of that valley, I'm not fully out of it yet, but I feel like I am. I feel elated. I feel cared for. I feel like I really can trust and to surrender to this bigger knowing. And sometimes we're forced into that. I was forced into that, but I appreciate it nonetheless. But just knowing that we can't get it wrong. We can't get it wrong. It's our own path, and we get to choose it. There's so many paths to the same destination, right? And the destination is self-actualization. Well, of course, there's different paths because there's different destinations because we all have our own version of what self-actualization is. Again, I'm getting off course. So, talking about being soul-led, when we follow the guidance of our higher consciousness, it leads us to all of this beauty, all these things that we couldn't have even imagined. Here's an example. So last year, I had been, all things were saying don't move. But I wasn't happy where I was at. My dog wasn't happy where I was at. I mean, I was fine. I'm going to be happy wherever I'm at. But I've been there for a little over 3 years. I'd spent all of COVID there. I had been there in that house so much that I was ready for a change. And I knew I needed a change. There were some things I wanted to do that I needed to have a different living situation in order for that to work. And I wanted my dog to have a better place to live towards the end of his life. I knew he was getting older. I didn't realize that it would happen, a couple of months after I moved in. But there you go with that trusting part. But it was really important to me that I get us back into haiku, that I get us back into the jungle with a big property so that he could really enjoy the end of his life, as it was getting harder for him to go everywhere with me. And he would go anyway, but didn't really want to, but wanted to get out of the yard for whatever reason. It was time for us to move. But our rental market had more than doubled since I moved into my house. And the house that I moved into was already a great deal when I moved in. I had a fencing yard. It was a walking distance to Mana Foods and Paella and all the things that I love, to do in that area of the island, and close to friends. It was a great situation, and everything said, why would you leave this? There's nothing wrong here. Deal with the little things that you don't like. It'll be okay. But I just knew I need to move. And I wasn't able to for a long time because I was sick with the long COVID, and just even the thought of it, I just knew it wasn't possible. I didn't have it in me. I could barely brush my teeth some days. So I just kept saying, like, I'll know when it's time. And when it's time, my place will show up. And I have that belief because that's always been the case for me here on Maui. I've always had really great fortune with finding amazing places that I can afford. And, I've just always had really great housing luck on Maui. And so that's the belief. There was nothing obstructing that belief for me. It was just like, I know how this works. When it's time, the right place is going to show up, and I'll know it. And I just left it at that. So the months go on, and I even have one of my dear friends who, we help hold each other accountable. And she had asked me, are you looking? I know you need to move. Are you looking? And I'm like, I just know that it's going to show up, and I'm going to know what it is. Well, January comes along, and I'm like, just one day, I was like, oh, I feel it. It's time. It's time to move. I know what I want to do next, and I'm going to have to move in order to do that. So it's time. So later that day, I was kind of getting over being sick, so I didn't want to necessarily go anywhere other than my bed, but also I felt pulled, and I wanted to be there. It was my friend's kid's birthday party. So I went to the birthday party and ran into some mutual friends who I hadn't seen in, at least a year or two. And we were just talking, and the conversation was almost over. And then they asked me, they were like, oh, are you still in Paella? And I'm like, I am. But, I'd really like to move before this summer. It's going to be really hot, and I'm just ready to move on. I'd like to move. And they're like, oh, well, we have a place opening up on our property. And they're going to be doing some renovations on it, but so it might be a month or so before it's ready. But it's a one bedroom, it's this, it's that. And I just, something inside of me, I didn't know, I was living in a 2-bedroom at the time. I was like, yeah, that's my place. I knew. I'd never seen this place. I barely got any details. They're like, oh, it's older, it may not be for you, but maybe. It'd be cool to be neighbors. But I just knew, and I told him, I was like, that's my place. I just feel it. That's my place. Hadn't even seen the place yet. So I talked to the landlord. They get me in touch with the landlord. Like a few days later, I reach out and I'm like, ooh, I'd love to check that out. I'm the only person that's seen this place that's talked to the landlord about the place. And when I got in, it was like, oh, it really needed some work. They were going to do like replace the top cabinets in the kitchen and do a little here and there, but not a lot. And it was rustic. And the place I was currently living was not rustic at all. So I go out in the place, but I still knew, like I just had this inner excitement when I was there. And in my mind, I'm like, oh God. But inside I was like, ooh, this feels so exciting. This place feels good. So I was like, yes. And she's like, but you don't even know what it's going to, I'm like, I don't care. Yes, I want it. It's mine. I want it. So we went through the whole process. It took about a month. And then they still had some work to do on it. And then the whole thing took about 2 months before I could move in, which was perfect because with the long COVID, I needed that time to pack, to get everything. It was impossible for me to do everything I needed to do in 1 month's time. So it was perfect. And it all fell into place perfectly, of course. But when I had looked at the place and then I walked home, I got home that night, I opened my front door at my previous house in Paia and I kind of sunk a little bit and I was like, oh, this house is so nice. Like, why? Why am I doing this? This house is painted and this house is newer and the appliances are newer. Like, what am I doing? And then I just remembered and I was like, no, it was such a strong feeling. Like, you just knew this was such a strong feeling. Listen to it. Trust it. So I did. And inside there was a little turmoil for a couple of weeks where I was going between my gut and my mind, my gut and my mind. And I finally was just like, I've already committed. Like, this is happening. Just get on the train, Melissa. It's leaving the station. Get on board. It's happening. So I just stuck with it. And even though I kept getting afraid and wanted to back out, I just stuck with it and I trusted and I went into the process and I moved it. When I walked into this place, I had not seen it since they had done any of the renovations. And when I walked in, I was blown away. Apparently there was more wood damage than they had expected. So they renovated my entire kitchen, brand new everything, top to bottom. My entire bathroom, which was looking kind of scary beforehand, new cabinets. It's beautiful. The place is kind of like log cabiny. It's like this ugly brown, but I was just like, it's okay, Melissa, just trust. The landlord had come in and painted the walls white in the bathroom and the living room with this like dark edging. It's my dream. It's gorgeous. I'm on a gulch. I hear the river running down below. I'm surrounded by jungle. Every window I look out is some beautiful plants and trees. And I've even got a little bit of an ocean view. It's nuts how amazing this place is. And $300 cheaper than what I was paying before. It's bigger. Yes, it's a 1-bedroom, but there's like a little bonus room, which is what I'm in right now recording in. It's much bigger than the other place. Amazing yard. Zappa, where he chose to lay his soul to rest, is gorgeous under 2 cedar trees and this sweet little patch of grass. And he was happy here and it was perfect. But had I listened to my mind, had I listened to the logic and the reason, instead of trusting my soul to lead in the situation, I would still be in Paia. With all of the financial difficulties I went through over the last year, I might not even have a home. I could be houseless because I was late for months here. My landlord was so understanding and trusting and really worked with me because since the fires, everybody's struggling and she really got that. My other landlord would not have been that understanding. It all worked out. Every single bit of it lined up exactly the way it was meant to be because there were all these things that were going to happen, like the fires, that I had no awareness of. But my broader perspective knew every bit of it. So, and that can keep going on to like when Zappa passed, there's so many things. It was so hard and it was so difficult, but how that timing worked out and how during that stressful time, I wasn't spending hundreds of dollars a month on his medicine and his food and everything. I mean, of course I would love to have him here and I would be houseless with him if that were the choice. That wasn't the choice. So I can see how it all worked out in my favor. That's what it looks like. It's what your logical mind is going to come up with when you feel something and you feel excited about it in your body and then you send it on up to the mind. you're really just taking all the magic away from yourself, from energy, from spirit source, whatever. You're just taking the magic away, because it's letting that soul lead that leads us into these magical, beautiful spaces that we wouldn't have even thought existed. Right? And that's why, we have these emotions. We've talked about this. Our emotions and feelings, they're indicators of where we are in relation to our desires. So ignoring those feelings, not feeling our feelings when we're angry or sad or whatever, and just forcing all those things down, it just keeps us in our mind. Sure, we can accomplish what we want through force and hustle if that's how you want to spend your life. We can fit a circle into a square hole, but guaranteed it's, you keep forcing hard enough, sure, it's going to get in there, but it's going to cause some damage along the way. It's never going to fit quite right, and nothing's ever going to be quite whole because it wasn't meant to be that way. So sure, we can force our desires. We can say, oh, I really want that job and I'm going to do whatever it takes, or I really want that business and I'm going to do whatever it takes to make it happen. But if that desire came from our mind and not from our soul, then we're spinning our wheels. We're like working so hard and doing all these things and really missing out on the true human experience. This, my friends, is not a judgment. This is coming from the horse's mouth. I have forced and forced and forced. For 4 decades, I forced my life. I forced squares into circles and circles into squares, and I was good at it. I got a lot of Aries. I got a lot of determination in me. I could force some stuff, but it never, ever, ever felt like what I wanted. And when we start realizing that what we want is not necessarily the thing or the person that we want, but what we really want is the outcome, how we're going to feel as a result of the outcome, or how we think we're going to feel as a result of that outcome, then we can start letting go of our attachments to the things that we think we want and start listening to ourselves and understanding what we really do want. And our emotions are a great indicator of that. It's a great way to keep us on our track, right? And that's why there's no judgment when we get off track. You can get off track, whatever, be depressed for a while, and that feels like you're off track, and it feels out of alignment with that flow state, right? But guaranteed there's something in there for you. Guaranteed there's something you're learning from that. Guaranteed there's a timing to that. So you got to feel your feelings, like feel it. Just trust the emotions, trust the feelings. I'm not saying be rash and do dumb things. No, but when you really integrate this body, mind, spirit, holistic approach, when you really start living authentically, start working on your traumas, start being honest with yourself, radically, radically honest with yourself, radically, radically accepting of yourself, of all of it, all the dark parts, all the ugly parts, when we really, really get honest about what our feelings are telling us and what we're trying to make happen instead, when we really integrate this approach, I promise you the results are going to be better than what you're trying to force. Whatever you're avoiding feels so ick, but I promise you, from tons and tons of experience and from observed experience, I promise you that it's not as ick as you think it is. It's not as ick as you think it is. Those dark parts of yourself that you're hiding from, that you're not feeling your feelings because you're afraid of parts of yourself, you're not being honest with yourself about a relationship situation, a friendship situation, a job situation, your relationship with yourself, when you're not truly fully being honest with yourself and really embodying this wisdom of embodiment, of mindfulness, of letting your soul lead your life, it's just keeping you from what you really want. And if you don't believe me, just try it. Just try it. There's nothing to lose, right? Just try it. Start like really, really getting honest with yourself. Really, really, really diving into these practices, and I promise you, you're going to see results from them. And once the veil is lifted, you can't go back. You're welcome. I'm sorry, and you're welcome. You can't go back. Once you've gone there, you just can't go back. So our soul whispers, like the Bible, I don't Bible thump. I don't throw scripture out. I do like to reference things because there is wisdom in there. So I don't typically reference it as scripture, but I'll use some quotes, right? And that's like asking, you shall receive. You ask and you shall receive. Like your soul is going to lead you there if you listen, right? But also that still small voice, that's our inner wisdom. I mean, that's that higher consciousness part of us, the broader perspective. That's the still small voice that the Bible tells us to listen to, right? So it's your soul's whispers, right? Trusting your intuition. It's key. It's key to making this or to allowing this process to become a working process in your life. Following your inner signals, it leads to a life that's so much more than what you're trying to force. That's so much better than what you're trying to force. You know, sometimes I'll get these little messages like, oh, bring your headphones with you. And I'm like, why? I don't need my headphones for anything. But then something ends up happening and I need my headphones for something because I'm end up stuck somewhere or whatever and want to use my headphones. Bring an extra cup to the beach. Why? There's only this many of us. I don't need it. Nope, just bring an extra cup. Trust. You know, it's just little things like that and how they work out and the synchronicities and how everything lines up. You know, it doesn't have to make sense. Just start listening. Start small. Start listening to that voice. I'm going to give you an example that's not mine, actually. This is a friend of mine. For those of you who don't know, I live on Maui in Hawaii, and last August we had multiple large fires, one of which burned down the entire town of Lahaina. My friend had a house in Lahaina and luckily had a motorcycle, and so when the fires were happening and everybody was trapped, he was able to like get out with his motorcycle and save his two roommates and take them over to Kanapali, which is on like the north end of Front Street, right? And Front Street is where everything culminated. Like the fire just came from the top and just forced everybody in to Front Street. Some people made it to the water. Some people didn't make it out of the water. You know, we're not going to get into all that, but it was bad. And being on Front Street in the peak of this was the worst possible place to be. But somehow, through a miracle, another friend of ours had gotten a message through that she was stuck by the banyan tree on the far south end of Front Street. So when he found out that she was down there, I mean, he had to go. He knew that he had to go save her. Otherwise, she would not have made it out. She didn't have a car. She, walked to work. She wouldn't have made it out. But this was literally during the peak. Everything like is exploding. Cars are exploding. Buildings are falling. Fire debris everywhere. And he does it anyway. Goes on his motorcycle, goes through Front Street. You can't see in front of you. It's black smoke everywhere. Tragedy. People, it's bad. It's really bad. And so my friend did it anyway. He drove on his motorcycle through and would have to put his foot down in this one place and steer over to this place really quick. And he was in complete flow state. That flow state where the body, mind, spirit is just, it's taken over. And you're just flowing. You're just making all the right moves. It feels like time slows down. I've had this happen multiple times that have gotten me out of accidents, vehicle accidents, but it feels like time is slowing down and like you're in like the Matrix or something, which, the irony, right? But so he's bobbing and weaving and he gets through and gets to the banyan tree just in time to grab our other friend, get her on the back of his motorcycle, keep going to another part of town, and got them to safety. But that morning, now let me explain to you, we're on Maui. Slippas are a way of life. If you don't know what slippas are, it's your flip-flops. We live in them. 95% of the time, we live in our slippas. We wear them everywhere. I have fancy slippers that I can wear if I want to dress up, my black fuzzy slippers, or the ones with the gemstones on them, right? It's a way of life here. But for some reason, that morning, when Rob was getting ready to leave, yes, on his motorcycle, he would wear his slippers. Well, this is Maui. This is how. When he was getting ready to leave, something told him to wear his sneakers. And he did. Luckily. He listened to that nudge. And he wore his sneakers. But there were so many moments in that time on Front Street that he had to depend on his feet to fully land on burning asphalt. That it's a miracle the shoes didn't melt off of his feet. If he had not had his sneakers on, if he had had his slippers on, it would have been a completely different outcome. But that thing that seemed so small that morning before anybody knew the disaster that was coming, of just wearing his sneakers instead, saved 2 lives. So I just, plus the lives of the people that they affect, right? But literally their lives. It could seem like such a small thing, but when you start listening to those nudges, you don't have to know why. The mind is the one that needs to know why, because it's constantly comparing and trying to keep us alive and trying to keep us safe. But when you start letting your soul lead and start listening to those nudges and following the nudges, even when they don't make sense, of course, don't go, if your nudges tell you to go jump off a cliff, that's not the nudges. Go to therapy and get some help, please. Not in a sarcastic way or judgmental way. I love therapy, but that's not what I'm saying. When you're in tune with your soul's nudges and you listen to those nudges, it always leads you to something better. Even if that something better is just a quicker route to work, even if that something better gets you to all the green lights on the way and makes your morning, even if that something better just maybe puts you in line with something that you never know what happened, but it helped someone else. You know, our broader perspective, they're connected, right? So we're co-creating together, whether we realize it or not. But that's how important it is to listen to these nudges. And we all have them. This isn't something we have to earn. It's always been there. But the more we ignore it, and we're taught to ignore it, we're conditioned to ignore it. Unfortunately, those of us who were raised in the 70s and 80s, in the 90s, a lot of us, not everyone, but a lot of us were bullied by adults. It still happens. Like, that's a lot of the parenting style, is just bullying little kids. So we learn to stop listening to that voice and to ignore it. And the more we ignore it, it makes it harder to hear, but it never leaves us. It's always there, patiently, just patiently holding space until we come back and start listening. And the more we follow these signals, the more we listen, the clearer that they get over time. And eventually it just becomes a way of being. A way of being that I cannot recommend enough. A way of being that has revolutionized what life is for me. I spent a large majority of my life with suicidal thoughts, like a large majority of my life. Feeling victimized by life and feeling like it's impossible and everything is, feeling the weight of the world and all the pain and all the things. I spent so much of my life suicidal. And then I wasn't for a few years, and that was great. And then it started coming back, and something kept holding on, even when I was so close, like something kept holding on. And I know it's because I knew that this was possible. Because now, like, less than a year ago, I wanted to take my life. Right now, I can't imagine. I feel like I'm walking on clouds. I feel like no matter what is happening in my bank account or whatever else, I am cared for, and I can trust, because I know everything that's happening is leading me to exactly where my soul wants to be, to exactly where my heart wants to be. There's a trust. It's a beauty of life. It's an enjoyment of life. It's so fulfilling that I'm showing up here now and talking. Like, I got some pride, y'all. This is not easy for me to be this vulnerable and to put myself out here like this. It's getting easier because I'm just doing it and showing up and doing it, but it's not ideal. I never wanted to start telling people that I'm psychic and that I get intuitive transmissions and can tell you, like, what you need to be doing or what your loved ones are saying, or what, like, I never wanted to say that. I always kept it to myself because I didn't want people thinking I was crazy. I still do, as much as I hate to admit it, care what people think about me. To an extent. That caring has definitely decreased. But I do. And about my image. We all do. And, I'm showing up anyway because my soul is telling me to. And I know that whether I like it or not, in the moment, it's always going to lead me to the better place. So, how do we tune into our intuition? As I've already mentioned, like I said, these things are all interconnected. Practicing the mindfulness, quieting the mind, not depending on the mind for your guidance, depending on your internal guidance of your soul instead of depending on the guidance of your mind, and letting your mind be used to create dreams and problem solve in the physical realm. Like, let Let your mind be used for what your mind is to be used for, and let your soul do your leading. Let your soul make your soul choices. Engage in activities that bring you joy. Y'all, it's winding up, but the 90 days of play has been huge. It's been huge for me, and in cultivating these practices. It's free. You can find it on my website, 90 Days of Play. Find it on social media. It's all over the place. It's so much fun. It's really just about prioritizing joy. Only I think a week and a half left, or 2 weeks left, something like that. It's been amazing. But just engaging in activities that bring you joy. It doesn't have to be that. If you need some guidance, that's there for you. But if you already know it brings you joy, then do it. That's going to connect you to your body. It's going to connect you to the inner child, the part of you that remembers what you love and what you really want. Spending time in nature, not just being in nature on your phone or being in nature wondering about where you're going to go next, but really just communing and being in nature and enjoying absorbing energy from the earth and enjoying giving back with appreciation and splendor, and developing a relationship with the world around you, outside of just humans. Meditation, of course, any kind of mindfulness practice like that, journaling. I actually make a lot of really cool journals. You can, in my Instagram, there's a link in my bio that takes you to all my journals and stuff. I'm trying to get them on my website. It's just taking me a minute. But I've made a lot of cool journals for mindful self-compassion, for, manifesting, for all kinds of different things. So if you're looking for one, go support me. They're actually really affordable, and they're awesome because I put so much love into everything that I do. Or go get another one, or go get a cheap notebook. I don't care. Keep it on your computer, whatever feels good to you. But some kind of reflection to where you're not just going, and never really learning from what's happening on the day-to-day. The more you start listening and following these messages, the more you can hear them. That's the easiest way. It's just listening and following. If something says, go this route instead of that route, you don't need to know why. Just do it. Just do it and see what happens. Maybe it's nothing, but that doesn't mean you don't try it again the next time, because it could have saved you from something that you don't even know. It could have saved you from an accident or from a ticket or something that you don't even know. Trust that your ancestors, that your guides, that God, that whatever you believe in is all conspiring in your favor, because they are. Why on earth would they be doing anything otherwise? I guess not on earth, but why in infinity would they even be doing otherwise? Your loved ones are on the other side, conspiring in your favor. Your ancestors are conspiring in your favor. This earth is conspiring in your favor. Source energy is conspiring in your favor. Your angels or guides or whatever you want to call them, everything is conspiring in your favor. And when you really, really learn that, it makes it easier to trust. And the only way to build trust is to build trust little by little. You just start building the trust with yourself. The more you're honest with yourself, the more you can say what you feel, the more you can be honest. We all have bad thoughts. We all think selfish things. Whatever you think is so bad about you, be honest with yourself about it. And when we can really start facing these parts of ourselves and being true to ourselves and allowing our authentic self to just show up without judgment or containment and just being authentic to ourselves, all of this stuff starts happening naturally. It's all a process that works together. The more you start listening and following the messages, the more you can hear them. It just eventually becomes a natural way of being. To bring it all together, embodiment, mindfulness, soul-led living, they're inseparable. They're all parts of a whole. Together, they create a balanced and authentic life. So I appreciate you being here. There's so much to this. As you can see, I kind of get off on a little tangents because there's just so much to say about this. There's just so much here, and I guarantee, I am not going to leave this out because this is so important. You are already doing this. You are already letting your soul lead in ways that you don't realize. It has kept you alive, I promise. There's already ways that you're doing it, but you don't notice because you don't have any energy blocks or mental blocks around that thing. It was like me with the house. It was so easy for me to be so led into that because I didn't have any blocks on me getting good housing. There was nothing blocking me from believing that that was entirely possible for me. So there was no resistance there. And so I just want to give you some credit. Give yourself some credit. You are letting your soul lead in areas that you don't even realize. All the nudges and intuitions and inklings that you follow without even thinking twice. I mean, these days I can get up, like, I don't know why. I just get up and go to check the dryer, and the second I get in front of the dryer, it buzzes and it's finished. You know what I mean? They were doing these things all the time, and we don't realize it. The more we get in line with them, the more it happens, and the more we can be aware of how it's working in our favor and use it to our own advantage. But I just want to encourage you in that you're already doing this in ways. You're already experiencing the power of this in ways. So, you know, there's nothing to lose. There's nothing to lose in trying it some more, right? There's been so much coming to me on this. I know that once I end this call, it's just going to keep coming. That's how it works. So, you know, follow me. I've got more to say. If this feels something good, if this feels good to you, if you hear this and there's some truth in this that you feel, you know, leave what doesn't feel true. But if there are things that I'm saying that are lighting your soul up in a way that are making you think, oh my goodness, maybe there is another way. Maybe this internal knowing I've always had that there's another way of doing life, maybe that's true. If that's what you're thinking, that's what you're feeling, I've got something for you. There's a reason why you're hearing this. There's a reason why you're listening to me speak right now. If you're hearing this and you're like, this is weird, whatever, that's fine. No worries. No offense. There's people out there that are going to speak in the way that you're meant to hear it. You're welcome here, of course, but you don't need to be here, and that's fine. But if you're feeling aligned to this and this feels good and you want to hear more of it, I've got more to say. I've got more to offer. I've been led to start offering one-on-one sessions, which is really cool. I've got this really cool offering that I'm going to be doing locally for now until I get to the point where I can do it remotely. But it's like a 2.5 hour immersive that is a body, mind, spirit immersive. It includes like body cellular rejuvenation. It includes breath work and embodiment practices. It includes like some meditation and some intuitive guidance. If that feels like something that lights you up, that's available. Reach out to me. I'm at livealoud.com. I'm at authentically Melly on Instagram. I'm on YouTube at, I think it's also the handle authentically Melly, but it's Diary of an Authentic Life. I'm all over the place. People, come and find me. I'd love to hear from you. I'd love to work with you. I've got so much to give, and I put my heart and soul into everything that I do. And if that feels like something, if living a life where it feels like you're floating through life to everything that you love and desire and every person that's aligned with you and leaves you feeling better and not doubting yourself, if you really feel like a desire and a pull towards this authentic way of living, I'm here for you and I would love to work with you. So reach out. I love you all. Thank you so much for being here. I hope you have a wonderful day. As always, aloha and stay authentic.